If everything familiar has started feeling strangely foreign, you are not losing yourself. You are outgrowing an identity your soul can no longer inhabit. That strange lack of aliveness may not be depression, failure, or the end of your path. Sometimes the universe goes silent right before it rebuilds who you are. In this video, you will understand the invisible symptom, what it means spiritually, and what is trying to be born after the collapse. Stay with me until the end, because in the final part of this video, I'm going to show you why everything familiar starts feeling foreign before your soul repositions. There is a phase in life that almost no one prepares you for. A phase where your routines still look the same, your name is still the same, the people around you may still be the same, and yet something inside you no longer recognizes the life you are living. It is subtle at first, a strange distance, a quiet disconnection, a feeling that what once felt natural now feels heavy, unreal, or emotionally out of reach. And if you have been living through that, you may have wondered whether something is wrong with you. But what if this is not dysfunction? What if this is transition? In this video, I want to give a name to what you have been feeling. First, we will look at the invisible symptom that appears when your old identity starts losing energetic coherence. Then we will explore what that experience means spiritually, why the soul often creates confusion before realignment, and why the universe can feel silent when something deeper is being rewritten. And by the end, you will see what begins to emerge after the collapse, because something always does. How many times have you felt that life was trying to tell you something, but the message came in fragments, through repetition, through endings, through sudden numbness, through relationships that no longer fit, through a version of yourself that no longer feels alive? This is why this conversation matters, because many people experience the symptoms of awakening while interpreting them as failure. They feel the glitch, but they do not understand the code behind it. This space exists for that exact reason, to meet at the crossroads where consciousness, energy, and inner transformation begin to explain what the mind alone cannot. So if your inner world has been shifting faster than your outer life can explain, stay with me. What feels like chaos may actually be the first sign that your soul is repositioning. What is really happening to you spiritually, what you are feeling, may look like confusion on the surface, but spiritually, it is often the moment when an old internal structure starts losing its force. There are seasons in life when nothing dramatic happens outside, and yet inside you, something begins to detach. You wake up with a strange weight in your chest, not exactly sadness, not exactly fear, just a quiet sense that your energy no longer fits the shape of your current life. The places are the same, the people are the same, your responsibilities are the same, but your soul is no longer responding to them in the same way. This is one of the most invisible symptoms of inner transformation, the loss of emotional familiarity with a life that once felt normal. And this is where many people misread the process. They think, maybe I'm ungrateful, maybe I'm broken, maybe I'm just tired. But sometimes the truth is deeper than that. Sometimes your spirit is withdrawing energy from an identity that has already completed its purpose. Not because your past was false, not because everything you built was a mistake, but because the version of you that could live comfortably inside that reality is no longer the version trying to emerge. This is why the transition feels so disorienting. You are still standing inside a life that matches your old frequency, while your inner world is already moving toward a new one. And that gap creates the glitch. You may notice it in ordinary moments. A conversation that used to feel easy now feels strangely empty. A goal you chased for years suddenly feels lifeless. A room in your own house starts feeling foreign. Even your reflection can seem unfamiliar, as if your face still belongs to you, but your energy has already gone somewhere ahead of you. That does not mean you are disappearing. It means the costume is loosening before the soul changes roles. Think of it this way. When a snake begins to outgrow its skin, The old layer does not fall away in one beautiful instant. For a while, it becomes tight, uncomfortable, irritating. Vision can blur, movement can feel awkward. The creature is not dying. It is preparing to shed what can no longer stretch with its life. Human awakening often works the same way. Before clarity comes, there is friction. Before expansion comes disorientation. Before alignment comes the uncomfortable feeling that your old identity has stopped functioning properly. And maybe this is exactly where you are now. Maybe you are not in a depressive collapse, even though it feels heavy. Maybe you are standing in the sacred tension between who you had to be and who you can no longer avoid becoming. That is why this phase feels so lonely. Because it is hard to explain to people when the symptom is invisible. It is not always a dramatic breakdown. Sometimes it is simply the loss of resonance. You laugh, but something in the laughter feels far away. You keep going, but the movement feels mechanical. You try to return to the old version of yourself, but it no longer responds when called. And this is the spiritual meaning beneath the symptom. Your soul is no longer asking for comfort. It is asking for congruence. It wants your outer life to stop contradicting your inner truth. That is why the universe often begins with disruption so subtle that almost no one around you sees it. The first collapse is energetic before it becomes visible. It happens in your interest, your emotional reactions, your tolerance, your patterns, your ability to keep betraying what you feel. The old self does not usually leave with a loud announcement. It leaves through silence. It leaves through numbness. It leaves through the strange moment when what once sustained you no longer reaches you. And here is the part most people need to hear. This is not punishment. It is preparation. The soul often removes emotional attachment before it changes direction. It loosens your grip before it reveals the next door. It lets the familiar feel foreign so that you stop mistaking repetition for destiny. In a moment, I'm going to show you why this process makes even more sense when you look at it through a quantum lens. But before we go there, hold on to this. When your old life starts feeling emotionally unreachable, it does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something truer is getting close. And the sentence you need to remember in this phase is simple. You're not breaking down. You're losing compatibility with a version of reality your soul has already outgrown. Now let's go deeper, because what feels emotional is not only emotional. Sometimes what you call confusion is the friction between two versions of reality, the one your body has memorized and the one your soul is beginning to recognize. From a quantum perspective, reality is not as fixed as it appears. We experience life as if it were one solid road, one identity, one sequence of events. But spiritually, it can feel more like a field of possibilities, multiple versions of you, multiple ways of being, multiple timelines waiting for your energy to become coherent enough to enter them. This is why awakening can feel so strange. Part of you is still emotionally entangled with an old timeline, while another part of you is already receiving signals from the next one. And those signals do not always arrive as answers. Sometimes they arrive as disruption, as restlessness, as a sudden inability to keep performing a life that no longer matches your frequency. Maybe this is why you feel pulled in two directions lately. One part of you wants to keep everything stable, understandable, familiar, but another part of you feels a silent call towards something you cannot fully explain yet. Not because you are irrational, not because you are lost, but because your higher self often speaks in resonance before it speaks in language. It does not always send a detailed map. It sends sensations, it sends repetition, it sends synchronicities that make no logical sense until you look back and realize they were guiding you all along. You think of someone, and they appear. You keep seeing the same message in different forms. A door closes, then another closes, then suddenly you are forced into the very pause you were avoiding. This is what many people miss. Synchronicity is not random decoration on the spiritual path. It is often the language of energetic redirection. It is how reality whispers, "This way." And when you ignore that whisper for too long, life may stop whispering and begin rearranging. That is when the familiar starts feeling foreign, not to punish you, but to loosen your attachment to the timeline you can no longer live from truthfully. Think about a radio tuning between frequencies. While it is shifting, you hear distortion, static, broken fragments of sound. The distortion is not the destination. It is the evidence that the dial is moving. Your inner life can feel exactly like that. You are not hearing a clear song yet because you are between frequencies, still connected enough to feel the old signal, already sensitive enough to detect the new one, not fully anchored in either. And that in-between space can feel unbearable if you do not understand it. You may wake up one day wanting a different life, then the next day feel afraid of losing the one you have. You may have moments of deep certainty, followed by waves of doubt. You may feel guided one night and numb the next morning. This inconsistency does not always mean you are unstable. Sometimes it means two realities are competing for your consent. The old one asks for repetition. The new one asks for trust. The old one is built from memory. The new one is built from alignment, and the bridge between them is often invisible at first. That is why the mind struggles during spiritual repositioning. The mind wants proof before movement, but the soul often moves before proof appears. It senses the next reality before the eyes can confirm it. It knows before it can explain. It pulls you toward people, places, endings, and decisions that only make sense later. This is also why your higher self can feel both comforting and disruptive. Comforting because at the deepest level, you know there is something greater guiding this process. Disruptive because that guidance rarely protects the false structures you built just to survive. Your higher self is not trying to preserve your performance. It is trying to restore your truth, and truth can feel like loss before it feels like liberation. Maybe that is why the life you worked so hard to build now feels strangely misaligned. Maybe the goal was not wrong for the person you were. Maybe it simply cannot contain the consciousness you are becoming. There are versions of you that can keep repeating the old story. And there are versions of you waiting on another timeline, already breathing inside a different emotional reality, more honest, more awake, more coherent, more alive. The question is not whether that version exists. The question is whether you are willing to stop feeding the identity that keeps you separated from it. In the next part, I'm going to show you the most common mistake people make in this phase, and how to align with the version of your soul that is already awake instead of begging the old reality to feel alive again. But before we move on, remember this. When reality starts glitching, it may be because your consciousness is no longer loyal to the timeline you used to call home. So how do you stop resisting this process and begin aligning with the version of you that already exists beyond the confusion? The first thing you need to understand is that alignment is not performance. It is not about forcing yourself to become more spiritual, more positive, more disciplined, or more enlightened, so the universe will finally reward you. That is one of the most common mistakes in this phase. People feel the old self collapsing, and instead of listening, they rush to fix the discomfort. They try to think their way out of the transition. They pile on routines, teachings, affirmations, and spiritual language, hoping they can control the rebirth before it has fully begun. But the soul does not awaken through pressure. It awakens through truth. And truth usually begins with honesty about what no longer resonates. This means alignment starts in very quiet places. It starts when you stop calling numbness normal, when you stop calling self-betrayal maturity, when you stop calling energetic exhaustion being responsible, when you stop asking, how do I get my old self back, and begin asking, what is this version of me no longer available for? That question changes everything, because now you are no longer trying to repair the expired identity. You are listening for the new one, and the new one rarely arrives as a finished personality. It comes as fragments, a stronger intuition, a lower tolerance for what drains you, a need for silence, a craving for meaning, a sudden desire to simplify, an urge to leave certain conversations earlier, a deep emotional reaction to something that would not have touched you a year ago. These are not random mood shifts. They are signals of energetic reorganization. Your awakened self often appears first as a change in what you can no longer pretend not to know. That is why alignment is less about adding and more about removing. Removing the habits that keep you numb, removing the environments that force you to shrink, removing the patterns that keep translating your intuition into fear, removing the constant demand to have certainty before movement. You do not need to become someone else from scratch. You need to stop interrupting who is already trying to emerge. Maybe this looks simple from the outside. Maybe all that changes today is that you sit in silence for 10 honest minutes. Maybe you admit that a chapter is over before you know what replaces it. Maybe you stop reaching for noise every time stillness reveals something uncomfortable. Maybe you notice that your body tightens around certain people and softens around certain truths. Maybe you finally let that be information instead of inconvenience. This is how the soul repositions you. Not always through dramatic miracles, often through subtle acts of inner consent, a whispered yes, a clear no, a pause that you stop resisting, a truth you stop editing. And this is where the quantum perspective becomes practical. If reality responds to coherence, then your life begins to shift when your energy stops sending mixed signals. When your mouth says yes, but your body says no, that is incoherence. When your heart knows something is over, but your habits keep feeding it, that is incoherence. When your soul wants expansion, but your identity is organized around safety, that is incoherence. The universe cannot fully stabilize a new timeline through a self that is still negotiating with the old one. So the work here is gentle but real. Notice what drains life from you. Notice what quietly gives life back. Notice where your intuition speaks before your fear interrupts it. Notice which parts of your life require a version of you that is already dying. And then begin there. Not with violence, not with perfection, with reverence. Because this next version of you is not built by punishment. It is built by relationship. Relationship with your own inner signal. Relationship with silence. Relationship with what feels true before it looks convenient. And yes, this can feel terrifying. Because once you become conscious, you can no longer live peacefully inside what is false. That is the price of awakening. But it is also its freedom. You do not have to know the entire road to align with the next step. You only need enough honesty to stop walking against your own soul. And before we move into the final part, there is one thing you need to remember. The biggest mistake is not moving too slowly. The biggest mistake is abandoning your own awakening just because clarity has not arrived in a form the mind can control. Stay with me, because in the next block we are going to bring all of this into a grounded reflection for today, so you can feel what is being born after the collapse, not just understand it intellectually. So now, before you try to solve your entire life, I want you to slow down and feel something deeper. Not every moment of confusion is asking for an immediate decision. Some moments are asking for recognition. This may be one of them. Maybe you have been trying to understand this season with the wrong question. Maybe the question is not, why is everything falling apart? Maybe the question is, what part of me can no longer survive by living out of alignment? Sit with that for a moment. Because when everything familiar starts feeling foreign, the instinct is to panic, to rush, to fix, to return to what felt stable, even if that stability was built on self-abandonment. But not every return is healing. Some returns are just fear wearing the mask of logic, And maybe that is why your soul has made the old road feel so emotionally unreachable. Not because you failed there, but because you are no longer meant to call that frequency home. So take a breath and ask yourself gently, what in my life still looks right on the outside, but feels false on the inside? What am I forcing myself to continue just because it once made sense? Where have I been asking for clarity while refusing to admit what I already know? Where am I calling this phase emptiness when it may actually be sacred space? These are not small questions. These are doorway questions, because awakening rarely begins with a new answer. It begins with a more honest relationship to the questions you can no longer avoid. Maybe today you do not need a master plan. Maybe today your only task is to stop fighting the evidence of your own transformation, to stop labeling your sensitivity as weakness, to stop labeling your disconnection as failure, to stop labeling your inner pause as wasted time. Some of the most important spiritual shifts happen in seasons that produce no external applause. Nothing dramatic to post. Nothing easy to explain, just an invisible rearrangement of identity, perception, and desire. And still, that invisible rearrangement changes everything, because once your soul withdraws from a false structure, life cannot feel the same. That is why this phase is so sacred, even when it hurts. You are standing in the space between no longer and not yet, between the version that carried you this far and the version that will carry you forward. Between the timeline that taught you survival and the one that begins to teach you congruence. So if you have been feeling lost, let this be the reframe. You may not be lost. You may be unrecognizable to the self you are leaving behind, and that can feel like grief. Because there is grief in awakening. Grief for the years you lived disconnected from yourself. Grief for the roles you wore too well. Grief for the people who only knew the version of you that was easier to explain. Grief for the dreams that once mattered and no longer do. But grief is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes grief is the soul's way of honoring what it must release in order to become more honest. So if tears come, let them come. If silence comes, let it speak. If rest comes, stop calling it laziness. If the next step feels small, do not underestimate it. A soul does not reposition through spectacle. It repositions through truth, repeated gently enough that the body can finally trust it. And maybe that is what is being born after the collapse. Not a louder you, not a more impressive you, a more integrated you, a more coherent you, a version of you that no longer needs to perform peace because it has started becoming peace. So for today, let this be enough. You do not need to rush the rebirth. You do not need to decode every sign. You do not need to force certainty. You only need to remain available to what is real, because the moment you stop begging the old life to feel alive again, you create space for the new one to finally arrive. And this is the truth I hope you carry from this part. When your inner world goes quiet, it is not always abandonment. Sometimes it is the universe clearing the noise so you can hear the soul that was underneath it all along. So if this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, take that seriously. Maybe this video did not arrive just to comfort you. Maybe it arrived to remind you that what feels like confusion is not the end of your path, but the end of your attachment to a version of yourself your soul can no longer live inside. And if something deep in you recognizes this, then honor that recognition. Let it become a decision. If this content touched something real in your heart, leave a like so this message can reach more people who are walking through this silent transformation too. Subscribe to the channel if you want a space that speaks to the part of you that is awakening, especially in seasons when the world around you does not understand what you are becoming. And in the comments, write, "I choose my new timeline," "I choose to awaken," or share a synchronicity you have experienced recently. Sometimes one honest sentence is enough to anchor a new frequency. And before you go, stay with the next video appearing on your screen. Because this video may be ending, but the inner process it awakened in you is only beginning, and the next step in your journey may be waiting there. Remember this, when everything familiar starts feeling foreign, it may be because your soul is no longer willing to live where your truth cannot breathe. You are not being erased. You are being repositioned. You are not losing your life. You are losing what no longer matches the life that is trying to be born through you. And maybe that is the message the universe wanted you to hear today. The collapse was never the punishment. It was the passage. The silence was never empty. It was sacred. This video ends here, but the version of you it has spoken to has already begun to move.